filters, and then go down to blur, and not in order, unfortunately. I've always never understand. It would be nice if it was sort of in order, but anyway, I assume it's in some sort of order of use maybe. But zoom blur. So what do you get? You get this panel, obviously comes up, and there's not many commands. I mean, there are options. Radius, that's it. What you can do, you can push it up to 100, and you can also change the origin point. So you can create some very unusual. Now it's a pity there's no time-lapse sort of feature, so you could store this and create a video film, MP4, etc., like in Clip Studio Paint. I would love to see that. However, it isn't. So you've got that. But you can also go over here and you can set it to 400 instead. So you can really push it a bit more extreme. You can see the blur there. And again, you can reposition it simply by dragging or clicking any position. So if you've got some very strong, and I'm just going to reduce it down, of course, so you can actually see it. Say you want to have the zoom blur coming from maybe that bandstand over there. This is my hometown. I've got a lovely bandstand there. So you can get the zoom effect coming from that. So you're making it very dramatic zoom there. Sadly, you can't obviously see that. You can if you use, of course, selections. So that's the next step. There's also options here, so you can see half, and you can move this backwards and forwards, which makes it quite nice to see. Though, to be honest, it's not. I guess it's good because you can see where you're pointing it. So you can see, oh, it's there, I want. So very useful. Or you can go for mirror view as another option as well. Most of the time, I must admit, I just generally keep it in that. Now, click apply. So once you've got that, what you can do, well, of course, you can undo it if you don't want it, but you can also go to a layer and you can fade zoom blur. That's super useful because what you can do, you can bring in fade. So you can fade it completely or have it fully 100%. Also, you've got blending mode, so you can go for darken, multiply, and you can see just by changing this fade slider, you can just vary colour burn, lighten, and you can see different, quite unusual effects can be created by just changing this add or difference. Now you can change that. Now, unfortunately, the image looks really nice and ghostly. However, it's not the particularly greatest of images, but maybe depends obviously on the photo itself. You also got exclusion, and you can see you can create some very unusual effects there. And that's using the fade, or you can just push it fully up to that, or go that way. Apply. Now I'm just going to undo fade, and undo zoom blur. So also what you can do, you may not want to apply it to the whole image. So what you can do, you can go over here. Now you can use a rectangular, elliptical. Let's say you want elliptical, and let's say decide that you want that, but you don't want the blur to be over that. See, oops, too great there, just from that central point. So just drag from that central point and just create there a selection around that. What you can then do is go to select, and you can invert the pixel selection. So it's all out there. That's where the effect will be applied to. So filters, and then blur, and go down to zoom blur, and you can see then you've got zoom. And now, of course, what you can do, you can move it over to that point, the bandstand again, and you can see the blur effect is applied outwards from there, but you can still see that. Now you can, if you want to, you can add some feathering, so again, just apply that. Undo, zoom blur, and I'm just going to remove that selection as well. Selection, just wanted to point out, you can do it. Of course, you can also use other selections, freehand. So set that, and that's just using basic freehand. You can just draw a quick selection, and you can also add. So along here, you've got the mode, so you can go to add, and you can maybe select another there. And now what you can do, go to zoom blur again. You can go to filters and blur and zoom blur, and you can see then the effect is just applied to that. So you can create some fairly odd effects using that, then apply. Well, what you can also do, of course, because it's there, you can invert the selection, and then you can go to filters and blur and zoom blur, and you can see you can create different design on top of that. So you don't have to have blurs coming all from the same place. Depends what you want to achieve with your effect. And of course you could create all kinds of different selections and build up. And also you can always decide, you know what, I've got that design now. What you can then do is you can go to freehand again and select a different area and just go over to filters and blur, and again zoom blur, and the zoom blur can be applied to that area, and you can see combine them, apply, and again layer and fade zoom blur, and you can see just by going here normal, you can see you can end up just creating an interesting blur there, and blur there, as well as blend modes. Now I'm not saying that there's any particular practical use for this, but if you're creating a sort of unusual image, I think this is quite a nice thing. However, I'm just going to undo those now because I don't want those. And then, but what you can also use is channels. Channels are really useful. So go to channels, you can find that in view and studio, same with layers and channels up there. So what you can do, you can go to composite red and then go to filters and blur and zoom blur. So you can apply a zoom blur like that, apply it. Obviously you could create a greater value than that if you want. Click OK. What you can then do is go to composite there, green, so just select channel, you can see it now there, selected. Then go to filters and obviously don't apply unless you want to, of course. What you can do, go to blur and zoom blur, maybe put it in a different position, apply, and again composite blue, and go to filters, blur and zoom blur. And now all these things you can store into a macro as well. You can set up macro. There's tutorials about macros on the Graphicxtras channel. So you've got there, just move different, apply. Now what I can do, I can just bring the whole thing back, simply just click there. And you can see then you've got this sort of lovely colourful scheme where you've got see 3 different zooms but in different colour channels. So you can create some very interesting effects, and of course you can go and add adjustments to modify that if you want. Great for textures and lots of other different designs. Now I'm just going to undo that. Now back to the original image. What you can also do, obviously you don't have to, you can use layers. So you've got here, you can go, and I'm just going to select that, maybe transform that layer. But before you do that, go to duplicate. So layer menu and duplicate. You can see then you can resize it, of course, rotate it. And actually do that, there's a rotate there. And what you can do, go over to filters again and blur and zoom blur. And well, in this case, I don't want to use the color channels, so I want them all to be active. And I'm just going to remove that. Don't want that, so delete. And with that, what you can do, go to filters, blur, and zoom blur. And you can see then it actually makes it virtually disappear because it's blasted out from, and you can change that, so you can see the effect. But if you push it up to like 400 or 500, it really sort of makes the thing. But if you want to, just push it up, say, to 200 and click apply. And of course you can still move this layer around. It's going to let me do it. Yep. Zoom blur. It's just processing, taking some time to process. However, obviously this is obviously too much for the thing. It's just obviously created. So then you can see you can move around, and of course you've got, and this is a destructive effect obviously to that, and you can still use blending modes, and you can see you can move that around, hue, saturation, maybe divide, and so on and so on. Okay, might not want to do that, but I just want to show you, you can use the zoom blur with layers. And of course you can have multiple layers, but of course it does add a bit more processing. So remove that. What you can also do, of course, you can use it with type, but you can also use it with like shapes. So here, let's say a diamond shape. Just select something, and you've got a red diamond there. Now, what you can do, you can always go to filters, and then to blur, and then zoom blur. And straight away, and it comes up with a little assistant there up in that corner telling you that it's converted it to a pixel layer. No longer a shape, so you can't edit it. Click OK. That's why it's nice to have as a layer, a live filter layer, because you can always modify the underlying shape. Unfortunately, this is destructive. So you've got that apply, and you can still, of course, move it around. So you can create some very abstract designs like that. And of course, click apply, and you've got that. Oh, that. What I want to do is go over here to the move, and just you can see move around. And of course, you can hold down the Alt or Option key on your keyboard, and you can duplicate that. So you can create all kinds of very abstract, or maybe apply them in different colours. You can distort this design now, resize it. It's a pixel layer. You can see over here, it's a pixel layer. It's no longer a vector design. And you can move that around. So you can do that with all of those layers. You can also use type or text, as it's called in Affinity Photo. So I've got here, so just a quick A, simply create it over here. You can use frame text, artistic text as well. And I'm just using artistic. So once you've got that, what you can do, go over to filters, and you can go to blur, and you can go down to zoom blur again, strange enough. And you can see straight away again, I don't know why this panel always starts over in this corner. You'd think that it would remember in the middle of the... I always like it in the middle, so it's nice if you could force it to be always in the middle. Maybe someone could put a comment in the thing saying, yes, you can do that. You can make certain it always goes there. I would love that feature. However, let's go to the zoom blur. And again, you've got exactly the same thing as before. So you can see you can distort your type. And if, of course, it might be a whole paragraph or whole page of type. And of course, you can do exactly the same with all kinds of other objects as well, in like gradients and many more. So I'm not going to go through every single possible object you can use a zoom blur with. And what you can do, obviously, click apply. And again, you can do exactly the same as before. Go to layer and fade zoom blur. And you can see you can create some interesting effects simply by using the fade there and go through. Now, of course, because the color is black, many of these are not much use, but you can see you can do potentially some things if you've got the right colors, those things in this letter. So click apply. And of course, you can resize that. And of course, I say you could add a lot more text than that. Well, hope you found this tutorial of interest. Always adding new tutorials about Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, Affinity Publisher. Get it right, Affinity Publisher. Actually, this can be also, I assume, because I haven't tested it, worked in Affinity Publisher as well. If you've got that, and you've obviously got Affinity Photo, you could use zoom blur in that as well, which is really great for some very interesting text effects and text designs. Also, please add some comments. Always appreciated. Anything I've done right, anything I've done wrong, always let me know in the comments. Always great. And also, dislike or like. Thank you much.